IES Research will briefly introduce our organization, and then we'll have, of course, our first two topic, which is first being presented by myself. I'm Mary Ho from Vertical Ventures, and I will be first presenting on research impact in Hong Kong and the RAE 2020. And then after that, we'll have Mr. Wei Fu Wong from IES Research, also, of course, sharing on the topic, embedding impact into the research workflow. After that, we'll actually allow 5 minutes to 10 minutes to have any questions regarding mine and also Wei Fu's sharing, and then we'll have a short coffee break. After the coffee break, then we'll have, we are honored to have here today Claudia from Griffith University, and she is the Deputy Director in Research Policy, and she will be, of course, also sharing with us the key learnings from the first assessment and how these are informing preparations for their next edition. So without further delay, what we want to do before we actually officially start, we would actually like to do a very just one question survey or a poll in terms of just to trying to understand, where we are at, our attendees, their understanding of research impact. So if every one of you who are with us here today can just, simply use your phone or, just type in slido.com on your desktop and enter the code to answer this simple question. How would you rate your current understanding of research impact? I will allow everyone probably just 2 to 3 minutes to do that. Thank you. Okay, so thank you everyone for participating in our very simple poll. So we can see that, nearly half of the attendees today have some understanding of research impact, and hopefully, of course, today, between me and the other two speakers, we can, share our experience and our insights in different, parts of the world in terms of, research impact assessment exercise. And so also, of course, by your response to these questions also allows our give us as speakers, allowed us to have a bit of understanding of who our attendees are as well. So thank you very much. So let's then oops, sorry, just hold a second. So let us, start with the introductions. As I say, we'll allow first IES to just very briefly introduce their organization. So I'll now pass to Iris.
Right, thank you, Mary. Good morning, everyone. I'm Iris Xu from IES Research, and it is our great pleasure to co-organize the webinar with Vertical Ventures on research impact. Research impact, as we just saw from the survey, it is something that we always talk about, but probably not everyone is aware or understanding how to achieve or measure it. So at IES Research, what we do is to transform research publications into compelling stories through plain language summary curation, visual design, and social media outreach. With such transformation, scientific publications become more digestible. Researchers could communicate their research to non-field specialists more easily, and the potential of both academic and social impact would increase. We have already successfully helped a few universities in countries like China, Taiwan, and Malaysia to boost their research reputation as well as impact. You shall hear more from our chief consultant, Dr. Wang Weifu, later today, where he will share more about this process. And I hope you enjoy the webinar. Thank you. Back to you, Mary.
Thank you, Iris. So just a simple, just a very quick introductions to Verticals. Vertical Ventures is we actually deliver on our missions as we are impact experts with over 10 years of experience in the field. We are also the official advisors to the THE Impact Ranking, to the Times Higher Education Impact Ranking, having conceptualized the idea and been the methodology partner since inceptions. As mentioned, we have spent over 10 years developing the taxonomy that underpins our software today, the Impact Tracker, and also it is this taxonomy that feeds into the methodologies and matrix being used by the THE Impact Rankings. As you can see from the slides, in terms of our geographic reach, our proprietary software, the Impact Tracker, and also our new free-to-access collaboration platform, Track Impact.org, actually are being used by by the higher education in various countries and territories as well. And we have here just to very quickly show you our products and services to our clients. So we have here is our impact ecosystem, and as you can see in terms of our products and services, it comprises of Impact Academy, which is our CPD accredited e-learning suite, as well as our proprietary software Impact Tracker and our free free collaboration platform for all faculties around the world, the Track Impact as well. So let me first start with the first sharing on research impact in Hong Kong, and also the research assessment exercise that the city actually went through in year 2020. So also a bit of background about myself. So once again, my name is Mary Ho, and I've been working with Vertical Ventures for 4 years now, and my background has been has been on social responsibilities, and also looking into ESG methodology as part of my research. And so I was also lucky with Vertical Ventures, able to transfer the knowledge on ESG and sustainability into, of course, the area in higher education to support the higher education sector to, to measure their impact in terms of their research. So in Hong Kong, in 2016, the Hong Kong's University Grants Committee actually have actually presented their sixth assessment of research quality to the higher educations in the city, and with this sixth assessment, the University Grants Council, the UGC in Hong Kong, has also included or introduced the research impact, which comprise of impact overview statements and impact case studies showing research outputs, impact, and environment during the period from October 1st, 2013 to September 30th, 2019. And this research, and so the research assessment exercise in 2020 was the very first research assessment exercise that Hong Kong's faculties have to encounter, research impact. And the plus side of the RAE 2020 is that the impact assessment or the research impact assessment was very similar to the UK Research Excellence Framework 2014, the REF 2014. And so for Hong Kong faculties, they could actually learn from their counterparts in United Kingdom. But on the negative side, on the minus side, faculties in Hong Kong actually were bit worried about, what does it mean by impact? How do we measure impact, and how we actually able to, tell the stories and share the data with, with the reviewers. So this is when, I had the honor to actually work with Vertical Ventures to engage with faculties and universities in Hong Kong to to support them in terms of writing their impact case studies, and also, of course, introducing to them what is impact, what do we mean by, what's the logic model, and also, of course, our approach or methodology to measure impact. So the experience was during that experience, with the faculties in Hong Kong and also the universities, we were actually being invited by universities in Hong Kong to help them in assessing their impact case studies. So because when we first entered Hong Kong, it was during, of course, universities were actually preparing for the RAE 2020. And so we were actually being invited to help them to review, based on our experience in UK, to review their impact case study. And it is through this experience, we were actually, Vertical Ventures was able to actually develop one of the sub-products of our proprietary software, Impact Tracker, the Impact Reviewer. And the Impact Reviewer actually, so during the whole experience, we were, we engaged with each of the faculties who wrote the impact case studies. We, we discussed with them in terms of their research, who their stakeholders are, what are the impacts, how they, how to capture the evidence, or even how to gather the evidence to support the impacts that they actually claim. And so with that experience, we developed this methodology to help, ourselves as reviewers, but also the universities and faculties to actually have a more, automated, a more automations of case study management and case study review. So during that time between 2018 and 2019, Frederica Ventures we were actually able to develop the impact reviewer, which allowed, of course, anonymous reviewing of data, and also, as I say, automations of case study management. And we encounter, during this experience, we realized that quite a lots of difficulties or difficulties and stress that's being faced by faculties in presenting or even in preparing their impact case studies. And from that, we were and from that experience and our expertise, we have also come up with few insights and recommendations, which I will share with you later to help faculties around the world or in Asia in terms of how to better prepare for writing impact case studies, or even be better prepared for any similar assessments by institutions. So let me just very quickly share with you the results of the Research Assessment Exercise 2020 in Hong Kong. So the RAE results were released last year in May, and as you can see here, here we only show the percentage of each rating each university received it from each subject panels for which it has submitted case studies. And we tabulated all the scorings in this diagram on this slide to highlight the overall percentage of each rating the 8 universities have received it. And you can see actually in Hong Kong, the performance by all 8 universities has been really good, because more than 70% of the impact case studies that were submitted by the universities were rated as world-class excellence, or a good impact case studies as well. We also actually did a much thorough research, which we have actually published the report just 2 weeks ago. We did a more thorough research on the RAE 2020 impact case studies, analyzing the cases, each impact case studies in terms of how they measured impact, what kind of data they have they actually presented, or the data they've collected, how they present their evidence. And this research, we hope that the research that we have done will be able to actually help the universities and faculties in Hong Kong, but also across the world, to just to have a bit of understanding of how data is being presented. So this is just a very quick overview in terms of the different across different disciplines. We can see how how faculties, or how research based, more importantly, how the research actually demonstrate contributions across a wide variety of different impact types, ranging from, of course, health, economy, environment, public policies and laws, and society. But one of the most important part of our research that I would like to actually share with you today is, and I think this is also important to give faculties and universities just an idea of, the time that is actually needed to prepare a very good impact case study. So for this research, we actually examined the time lag between the underpinning research and the realizations of the impact of a 4-star and 4-star, which is a world-class excellence, and a 3-star impact case studies. So what we did here was extracting the dates from the research, from the reference sections, to of the case studies in terms of the year within the RAE required scope during the period. And we also, of course, extracted the latest years of the realized impacts claimed in the cases, and to actually calculate the time lag of these impact case studies and their research. So this is our, the main findings actually was quite interesting. This is a time lapse in terms of the impact case studies across the different disciplines. So there are in total 13 subject panels and 41 unit of assessments in Hong Kong. So this is just a very, brief diagram in terms of showing the time lags that's actually needed for the research to have an impact. And the average time lags across all disciplines, it actually takes an estimated 7 to 19 years for research to have an impact on the targeted beneficiaries or users. For the average range, the unit of assessments that took the longest time for developed research to realize impact within the allowable time window includes, of course, dentistry, philosophy, biological science, and religious studies. And what this part of our research actually indicates is that researchers fall within these disciplines that I've just mentioned can actually probably need to expect at least 15 years to develop impact case studies with potential of attaining, world-class recognitions in terms of their impact. And this is just a summary of, a very quick summary of our research in regards to the time lags on the impact case studies. And if you are interested to actually understand more about the, our analysis on the RAE 2020, I do urge you to actually, download our research analysis report that, as I mentioned, was published 2 weeks ago. And I believe my colleagues will also share with you the link, where you can actually download the full report. So just very quickly in terms of, the insights and recommendations we have from our experience with, RAE 2020 in Hong Kong, just 4 main simple points. First is that there is no limits on the types of impacts levels and evidence. And while an impact case studies falls maybe under one subject panel or disciplinary, the potential impact and evidence to be collected should be covered by its disciplines, but at the disposal of its largest reach and significance. So if any faculties in the science, health science disciplines, we need to actually, we need to actually broaden our, understanding of who our beneficiaries are, because it maybe actually includes, public policies and laws, or even, change in regulations, change in terms of professional skills, etc., or even in the society as well. The second point I want to make is to ensure that, engagement within the universities, but also with your beneficiaries and stakeholders, is as inclusive as possible. So faculties and researchers should ensure that they include everyone who needs to be included in their research, and universities also need to actually support that by helping them to gather the evidence that is actually needed as well. The third is actually quite an important point, is that faculties and universities needs to plan ahead and have a roadmap describing the sequence of related activities connecting the research with its desired outcomes and impacts. Research is a long cycle process, and it could take 6 years or even longer to generate research outputs and engage with stakeholder groups. So while faculties and researchers are comfortable in planning resources, research activities, and the decided research outputs, they also need to be systematic, they also actually need systematic thinking and planning for their research desires, outcomes, and impacts. And so we want to also introduce to you the logic model, which I will show you on the next slide. We think that the logic model approach will definitely help faculties and researchers to create a shared understanding of and focus on research goals and methodologies, and also relating those activities to the projected outcomes and impact. And finally, one last point or insights or recommendations that we have is, of course, we want to actually, encourage all faculties and especially universities to build an impact culture within the UOA or the academic departments. There is an urgency for universities to build an impact culture, a community of faculties and researchers who have the capacity to use their research to benefit society and stakeholders groups. Senior leaderships in universities should provide resources and value impact and also value the impact culture, and taking care to consider both bottom up and also top down approaches. As I mentioned, the logic model is something, it's actually one of the models that I personally definitely push for whenever, we meet with faculties or universities, that the logic model should be adopted by faculties when they are planning for their research. And this logic model is actually nothing new, because it was developed by the Kellogg Foundation in the 1980s, and these models have been in use for decades by the development sector, and also by higher education sectors in other parts of the world. And so some of you might be very familiar with it, okay, but others who may heard of it but not very clear about the logic model, we urge you to actually get familiar with it, especially when it comes to research planning, because it actually highlights the kind of information, or it helps you to highlight the kind of information that you are looking for in order to actually write a compelling impact narrative. The other thing I want to also share very quickly, and as a conclusion of my sharing, is that to succeed, especially in terms of understanding what research impact is, and also, of course, presenting the research, the impact of your research. To succeed at this, it is key to consider impact at the beginning, and this is, of course, and it is the part of the planning. So this is what I'm presenting here is the research project life cycle. Okay, so at the beginning, we need to, when we're planning for our research, okay, we need to, make assumptions about the factors that influence, your issues. And so we need to think about, what we hope to do. The second stage of our project life cycle is the planned work. Okay, to actually also, plan or brainstorm about, the activities that you plan to do to build on these, of course, the assumptions. Okay, so how we will do what we say we will do. And the final important part, as we have, also realized from our experience in Hong Kong, is, the intended results. So, how we actually measure what we say we will do, especially in terms of who are our beneficiaries. How do we measure if our target users or target beneficiaries actually benefit from our research? Okay, so we want to. So I'm going to just stop here. But I think what I've done here is just to very briefly, of course, share our experience, and hopefully you also understand, of course, the importance of planning early and the adoptions of the logic model. So thank you very much. And so what I'm going to do next, if you do have any questions, do feel free to to type in the question and answer box. Okay, so, and what we'll do is we'll move on to the second speaker, Wei Fu, and then after that we will answer any questions that you may have together. So let me just stop sharing my slides. So let me allow me to quickly introduce to you Wei Fu. So Wei Fu is a consultant at IES Research, and he has many experience in engaging with universities or higher educations in Southeast Asia and also in East Asia as well. And he's here today to share, with us, highlighting the importance of, what impact objectives are, and also, of course, looking into the importance of research workflow. So without any further delay, I pass it to Wei Fu. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Mary. And my name is Wei Fu Wong, and I'm based in Singapore. Right now, I'm working with IES Research. It's a subsidiary of iGroup Asia. I was the researcher. So when I kind of first started doing my research in University of Manchester, I was puzzling like, what is the real objective of a research? I know it sounds like a joke, but then that was the kind of feeling when you first sign up a PhD program. In fact, today, I always like to ask the researchers and say that, what would you tell your dad and mom about your research? And most people say that, well, I won't bother to tell them because it's like too difficult to understand. Now, here's the problem. If your research is so difficult to understand, how will you be able to engage with people? I mean, we are talking about bringing impact to the society. So that definitely, it had to be easily understood and have benefit to the people. So what I'm going to share shortly in this 20 minutes, we'll talk a little bit more on the upstream rather than the downstream. So I guess my presentation is a little bit different from the rest of the speaker, because I think that it is always important to start from day one. When you're doing your research, you know about your objective, you know about what could be the potential or impact looks like for the people, for the society. Well, first, I guess we have to look at a very simple research workflow. I think we all know that in your day one of your research, you had to start with discovery. That's why as a PhD student, most of you will realize that you're doing a lot of literature review for your year one, finding your direction. You probably have to use some tool like citation index tool. Maybe you use Scopus, maybe you use Google Scholar, or even Web of Science to help you to figure out the direction. And there's a lot of kind of back and forth. At times can be very frustrating. Of course, you try to get a lot of help from your supervisor. Now, as soon as you kind of see that, there's a way to go, you start doing your so-called experiments, survey, and, data collection. You start analyzing, and probably about a year or later, you start to write something out. Maybe a review paper. Maybe start, sketching some stuff out, because ultimately you need to submit a thesis or a publication because your research have to be shared. And this is what in the early day, people start seeing that the number of publication is very important. In fact, still today, it's still very important, and then talking about where to publish, how to publish, you have to publish in high impact factor journal and start counting the number. And then eventually you have to start counting who cited your paper too. In fact, if you look at some of the, library website, they did say that, some of these measurements are considered as impact. Those are what we call bibliometric, like your H index, like your citation numbers, and so on. So that are the kind of a measurement for every researchers, and it's still very valid until today. Now, of course, people also start asking the question, were those kind of numbers, so-called indicator or measurement, relevant? I mean, yeah, there are people get promoted to become a professor because they have published many papers in high impact factor journal. They are still pretty much valid in some university, but I think things start changing gradually, progressively, as you could see from UK, like being shared by Mary Ho earlier on. They've been putting a lot of effort changing that sort of measurement, because unlike citation, you can count number. When you're thinking about social impact, what kind of impact you can bring to the society, that is a different kind of thing. That is not very quantitative at times you look at it. So you have to find a way to quantify that whole effort. So thanks to REF, and also thanks to Vertical Venture being very visionary and pioneering some of this effort in the early days. So gradually you could see that some university like in Hong Kong, like in Australia, they start adopting that. But the challenge is remain, because as a researcher, you're still wondering which part of you, of your work, that have to start thinking about impact. Well, the way I look at it is pretty much the moment you look at your publication, because that is where you start to shaping out your objective. And one of the places that kind of for you to articulate your publication or your objective is really what we call thesis statement. A thesis statement is usually like 1 or 2 sentences at the very last paragraph of your introduction or background. So when you are working on your thesis or any publication paper or manuscript, that is the part, the last part of the introduction. You have to work out some sort of a thesis statement, define the objective, because that is the kind of moment that you have to like bring some impact to the world. And a matter of fact, typically, if, for example, you can say that, well, banana herb tea supplement, it promote rapid weight loss, but it result, it hurt the muscles. It could be potentially dangerous to customer. So that is pretty clear, but there's some research. The thesis statement is actually can be quite, sophisticated. It's talk about like virus, it talk about molecule. I mean, take for example, like coronavirus. Nobody know about it 5 years ago, but today I think coronavirus is very popular for the bad reason. So it is something that we have to really think about how to find it, communicate across easily so that it could bring impact. So when you think about working on a impact case study, then you have to start thinking about your language, the way you're writing. Would that be still as like writing a thesis or manuscript, or you had to be changed to something what we call impact writing? So I guess I want to go through very quickly on 3 things on a real case study, how some universities start taking a more proactive to engage, because they know that if they don't start engaging with their so-called stakeholder, target community, or beneficiary of the research, then you wouldn't have the content to write good case study. And this is why I think we have making a little bit more colorful. I mean, it's sad to say that manuscript is always quite overwhelming with information. At times, I would say that can be quite boring. I mean, every researcher knows that you wouldn't want to read a manuscript or journal before you sleep, right? I mean, you rather read a nice storybook. So how you want to make it engaging? You have to be interesting. You have to be bite-sized. So one of the things we help some university to do, like in this case, we are talking about CMU, which is a Chinese medical university in Taiwan, is to translate or even curate some of their work into some so-called like a teaser. Like you're watching a movie, there's always a teaser. Why there's a teaser? Because you want to engage with the audience so that people could look forward looking at the full text. So the same thing here is that the paper from the left-hand side is curated into a TESOL, and we do an outreach using social media platform. It could be like Twitter, it could be like Facebook, and pull the traffic back for people to look at the TESOL, and actually more importantly, to get them to look at the full text. So typically we use social media a lot because, I mean, this is not really the only way to engage, but this is one of the very effective way to engage with wider audience, partly because it could reach out, 80 over country. I mean, that is something that we have proven, and 24/7 is almost, that kind of effect. It can be done with, workshop or, conference, that sort of thing. So typically you will use, social media snippet, you engage, and you have some catchy headline. And as some of you probably know that social media outreach is very targeted. You don't go like all over the places. You're trying to engage with people or community that probably interest about your work, and bring the traffic back to the TESOL, which is, again, very simple, very easy to understand. And sometimes you have video, graphical abstract, and plain language summary. In fact, for your information, a lot of publishers today is asking for graphical abstract and plain language summary. Why? Same reason, to improve the visibility, to make scientific paper more engaging, so that the traffic will come back to the full text. And the other thing, more importantly, is that it actually captured the footprint digitally. And now you can have data like this. In fact, this is a table show different paper. There are 15 paper here. So as you look at from left to right, I know it's quite small here. Don't worry about the detail. But more important is that the big picture is that every paper you have the footprint. You can see how many people click at the paper, click at the snippet, download the paper, and so on. I mean, think about it. If nobody download your paper and read your paper, how could you get citation, right? So it's the same thing here. Now, it is not about people getting the citation, but it's also about people respond to your work. And a lot of these people who respond to your work are familiar with what you're doing. So these are potentially the stakeholder or the beneficiary of your work, and in a global perspective. And this is very important eventually for you build the case study, impact case study. And of course, you can do some evaluation. And typically, this will be the social media type of data analytic. Some of you probably familiar with Digital Science or Metric. They're doing pretty much the same thing, capturing those data, the traffic from about your paper, and do the ranking. So that's what they call a metric. But actually, more interestingly, eventually, you like to see how your research align to different United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, what we call UN SDG. And their data be able to capture like this. So this is kind of typically like what we have working with the Chinese Medical University to do the outreach of the paper through social media, collect the data, and you can start seeing some of this SDG related information, which is quite interesting to see that and analyze that over time. And we believe that there's a lot of rich content over here for the researchers, because now you start to seeing that how people look at your work, instead of like in the old day when so much pressure on publish or perish, you just publish all the paper and just wait for citation to come. In fact, outreaching and engaging the target audience is becoming important, because if you don't engage, definitely there's a lot of work that at the downstream cannot be done, or I should say the difficult. So you can see that like being shared by Mary Ho earlier on, there's so much content is required. And at the upstream, at the beginning of your work, you should start looking as a researcher how to position your work in accordance to the social impact that you wish to contribute to the world. So this is something that I thought is interesting to some researcher, particularly young researcher, and think about early to embed the impact into your research workflow. Because this is not something until towards the end when you want to build an impact case study and scramble to find information. So this is a real case, and this is something that we feel proud working with Unisty, and looking forward, getting more feedback and question from you guys. Thanks. Back to you, Mary.
Thank you, Wei Fu. Thank you very much for the sharing. So what we're going to do next is if you do have any questions for me and Wei Fu in terms of what we have shared, we're going to allow some time to answer any questions you may have. So once again, you are welcome to type in the, if you have any questions, to raise your hand or type in the Q&A box, or even the chat box as well. Okay, so we have a question. Let me just take a look here. Okay, so Clay Black actually mentioned here, it will be very helpful to have a shared definition of impact here. So probably allow me to share with you, what I have here is actually a, let me see. Let me see if this works. Just one second. Yes. So so what I have here is, let me show you on the screen here, on the slide here. So this is the definition of impact by from the RAE 2020 in Hong Kong. And this is actually a basically the same definition that the RFE UK have as well. So in terms of impact, when RAE, when the University Grants Council in Hong Kong, they were trying to, of course, measure or define research impact. They've looked at what we would actually refer as the reach and the significance. So that in terms of your research, you should, in terms of impact, it has to have both reach and significance. So what is reach? Reach is basically here, as shown on this slide, is the extent and or breadth of beneficiaries of the impact. So who are your beneficiaries? Are you, do you have, a much wider populations of, of beneficiaries? You're not just focusing on, the discipline or the industry that that you're in, but also, you may also, have impact on others, as I mentioned, whether it's public policy, so it's the government, or, the community, the neighborhoods, and so forth. The second part of the impact definition is the significance. So here again on the slides, as mentioned, significance is the degree to which the impact has enabled, enriched it, influenced, informed it, or changed published the products, services. So it has provided, positive benefits or minimize the negative, benefits to your targeted stakeholders. So in RAE, they've actually mentioned it's not just about so-called creating positive impact, but also they also was very clear in terms of impact to the faculties and researchers is that, we are also measuring, of course, in areas where you may be actually minimizing, the negative impact as well. So this is the definition of impact based on RAE 2020, which is actually very similar to the one in UK. And Wei Fu, do you have anything else to add here?
Yeah, I think that is a very good question for the fact that impact is the definition of impact is really depend on which university you're working with and what kind of the ranking, the fund you're getting from. I know it is very difficult to define it because everybody might have a little bit different definition. There's no universal definition of impact. I mean, that's for sure. So let's say like you're working with the UK university, then like what Mary said, the RAE impact definition is of course very relevant. But let's say you're working in university in Malaysia and they are still quite unclear exactly what you mean by impact by them, but they may use the word in the funding proposal. They say that it must have impact to the society. That is pretty great. So I guess it really depends on where you are and what kind of research you're doing and where the funding coming from.
Yes, thank you, Wei Fu. So yes, in response to Kylie, yeah, this the definition that RAE had or the UK had was very much similar to also the one in Australia as well. We have another question here, and I think probably Wei Fu, you will be the better person to answer this. So it mentioned here, some journals in indexed database provides an embargo clause in contracts, meaning you can't share the article they have published it to others freely. So when you share the results of your published work, as you have mentioned it in your sharing of universities from China and Taiwan, so when you share the results of your published work on social media using another format, say for example infographics, would that be considered as a breach of the embargo clause?
Good, thanks. On the safe side, it's always good to read the publishers those fine print carefully. But generally speaking, even though it's in embargo or even though they are not open access, you are encouraged to use graphical abstracts to promote your work. This is becoming a trend for most of the publishers. Publishers also realize that if you don't help to promote the work, they won't get the traffic, they don't get citation, then they will not improve their impact factor. This is definitely much better than you are posting your full text at ResearchGate without the permission from the publisher, because that's an infringement of copyright for sure. So definitely I wouldn't encourage you to post your full text at ResearchGate without the permission. For open access, you probably can, but again, I guess from your question, you're familiar with their different type of open access. They are, hybrid, gold, green, and so on. So yes, some of those, they do have embargo for like 6 months or 1 year or even more than that. So always be careful before you start sharing. But then if you want to promote your work using graphical abstract or video bite about your work using social media, generally speaking, they are very safe because that is also what the publisher would like to do.
Thank you. We have another question for you, Wei Fu, as well. So do you have any good examples of effective support for researchers in regards to dissemination and engagement? And also, is this maybe, support from universities, marketing and communication office, or the research office, or any additional research resources in universities?
That's an interesting one. Now, we have been doing quite a bit of work with different university, with different department. We work with individual to help them with the research outreaching scale. Of course, ours is more on the upstream, like I mentioned early on, like how to write your manuscript with some impact writing scale. I know Vertical Venture, they provide more on the downstream, like how to write a very good case study. So they are all relevant. So we all both, Vertical Venture and IES, we do provide that sort of training, helping individual researchers. For us, we also do more than that. We are helping them to do the outreaching, let's say like making the publication into a story, and then we start doing social media outreach, depend where you want to target at. Some they want to target China and you can't use Facebook or Twitter, then you have to use the local web or local social media like Weibo, for example, that sort of thing. So we do run the training. We also do the work for researcher and provide report and so on. But one thing that kind of pops up very consistently is where to find the budget. Now, this is actually quite interesting because research outreach or engagement, I have to say that it's relatively new to many universities in the region, particularly the Southeast Asia region. So they could have budget for manuscript editing, they might even have money for open access, like, APC, what we call article processing charge, because for open access, the research had to pay for the so-called submitting the paper, which is a different model. But mostly you will realize that they just don't have the budget for like outreaching or so-called marketing. I guess that's changing. I know some university has started allocate some money for so-called marketing, or they call it engaging. But I think generally what we've seen the researcher facing right now is that they need to get that kind of resources or help. Just like I think we can see that open access has become quite common this day, and suddenly researchers facing the question now is that where to get the money to pay for the APC, because traditionally journal are paid by the library, they pay for the subscription, and now they change the model and say that research had to pay for it, then you had to start scramble and figure out where to find the money. So I think that's much a bigger problem, but generally we do have people that come to us for help on outreaching, on writing, on creating graphical abstract. We actually run classes for graphical abstract too. So I hope that helps. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the sharing. Let me check if there's any more questions. Okay. So I think those are all the questions that we have for our sharing. So once again, thank you very much to Wei Fu for your sharing. So what we have next is we will actually take a break for around 5 minutes. We'll be back at 11 Hong Kong time. And then, of course, by that time, we'll have Dr. Claudia Arango from the Griffith University to have her sharing. So let's take a break now, and we'll see you later. Thank you. So welcome back, everyone. So next we have our last speaker from Australia. So it's Dr. Claudia Arango. She's the Deputy Director of Research Policy at Griffith University. And one of her key responsibilities at the universities is the university's impact agenda, as well as research policy, performance analytics and compliance. We are honored to have her today to share with us the key learnings from Australia's first assessment on the first impact assessment, and how these are informing preparations for the next edition. So without further delay, I pass it to Claudia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, and good morning, everyone. Good afternoon here in Australia. Thanks very much for this invitation. I'm just making sure that everyone can see my screen and can hear me okay. Is everything working fine? Great. Thank you, Mary. Look, I'm really happy to be here and be able to share some of our experiences here at Griffith University in Brisbane, Australia. This is hearing Mary's talk, and also I think we share very similar challenges and very similar journey. As Mary said, I'm a Deputy Director Research Policy in the Research Office, or Office for Research, here at Griffith. I've been involved in the engagement and impact submission, and I've also been part of the team managing the Excellence in Research for Australia. So I am relatively familiar with the different aspects of research evaluation, and especially this what we tend to think as a more recent addition to the evaluation of performance. But as you will see, one of the points that I make during the talk is research impact hasn't been, it's not something new. It's been happening for a while, and especially at Griffith University, which is an institution very focused on social values and community engagement. I'll move to so just a very quick outline. I'll just briefly go through who we are, what some details about Griffith, how research impact is not necessarily new. Obviously, some of the challenges of the evaluations are new. What it means for us here at Griffith, assessing research engagement and impact, challenges, opportunities, and learnings from that submission that we put in 2018, the Engagement and Impact Assessment managed by the Australian Research Council, Commonwealth Government. How we are preparing for the next submission in 2024, even though it is not very clear yet how much changes they will introduce and what exactly the government are looking for in that next submission. And I'll just give a little bit of a taste of what we call the Pathways to Impact program here at Griffith, which is started relatively recently, and we see it as our impact strategy and the mechanism we're using to incentivize and promote impact and embedding impact into the research culture. So in terms of Griffith is a relatively large university in terms of number of students and number of staff, is very comprehensive. We have a bit more than 20 research centers and institutes now, covering many different areas. We are ambitious in terms of rankings, ranked in the top 2% of universities worldwide, and most ranking systems now ranking Griffith in top 300 or top 250. And as I said, it is a very social values oriented university. We get awards and recognition for as employer of choice for gender equality. There's a large emphasis on Indigenous communities and Indigenous people's opportunities, both in terms of the learning and teaching and the research as well. And as I said before, it is also, Griffith is quite a comprehensive university in terms of the areas that we cover in research. So this is just a snippet of the, a summary of based on the Excellence in Research for Australia 2018, in which showed that Griffith is ranked well above world standard in 20 fields of research. And we were assessed in most fields of research covered by the submission. This is again just a very quick introduction to the research that we have at Griffith in terms of ratings, the ERA ratings. You can see how diverse the fields are. So there's a very high quality research in sciences and health, as well as the social sciences. And in terms of growth, we obviously keep seeing growth in volume and also citations and research income. So there's already pressure, I guess, to maintain and to keep growing from the point of view of the academic impact, what we were hearing before in terms of how important citations are and how important the high impact impact factor journals are for academic profiles and for academic impact. We are now looking at how that combines, or how that supports research impact outside academia. And that's probably the challenge as an institution, but also for the individual researchers. As I mentioned at the start, the research impact is not necessarily new here in Australia, and I'm very lucky to work with Tony Shield. Tony has been here at Griffith for a long time, but he has also been involved in some of the working groups and the technical groups involved in designing the ERA exercise, but also the engagement and impact. And he put together this slide quite a while ago for one of his presentations, and I thought it would be interesting to look at the history of how that evaluation of impact in Australia has evolved, and it actually started in 2004. The government was already looking for a way of assessing the quality and the accessibility of publicly funded research in Australia. There was an advisory group, and they developed something that was called in 2005 the Research Quality Framework. And then there was a bit of an investment in just preparing and running pilots and getting ready for that evaluation. Couple of years later, there was a change in government, and Labor government came into place, and there were again consultations and discussions, and that research quality framework changed and became what is now ERA. And obviously some of the challenges discussed at the time were around how difficult it is to measure the societal impact of research compared to the usual citation metrics and the usual performance analysis that we are familiar with, and that's how ERA emerged as a research quality evaluation in Australia. And then in 2010. The similar process started with Sir Gareth Roberts, who was the main person driving that initiative here in Australia. It then moved to the UK, and that's when the REF 2014 started. Here in Australia, and that was around the time when I joined Griffith in 2012, 2013, there were already discussions on how to add a companion exercise to the ERA, more related to engagement and impact. And there were a couple of trials and pilots. And then in 2015, the government announced the National Initiative for National Innovation and Science Agenda. And one of the key initiatives of that big program was measuring and assessing the engagement and impact of research in Australian universities. So that's when we started really putting a lot of effort into understanding what exactly was what the government would want to see in that submission. And the timing was not great. There was an overlap between the two. The Excellence in Research for Australia focused on quantitative data, and then looking at writing impact narratives and writing engagement narratives, and starting to look at research from a very different angle. It was a challenge for those from Australian universities who are on the call today and were involved in 2018. They would know that it was quite a stressful time for everyone. At the time when, so with the Engagement Impact 2018 assessment, the ASC was very strong in communicating how important it was for the general public, for government, and for research end users to have access to and have a better understanding of how Australian universities are contributing to the growth and the economy of the country. So it was the ARC focused on creating the portal, and based on that national report that I'm showing there, they created a portal to make public the impact studies, the impact case studies submitted and rated high in 2018. Universities in general agree with the idea, and what happened with engagement impact was, apart from the pressure of the submission, it was really important to see how policy and compliance, a government submission could start driving behavior and could start really influencing how universities, how institutions and individual researchers might start at their research questions and the engagement that they have with end users a little bit differently. So even though it was not necessarily the best time and welcome submission, I think we've learned and we've seen the benefits of that government initiative. Some of the challenges, I guess, and I'm thinking that these are probably shared by many institutions, and including the institutions in the UK, going through the REF exercise now a couple of times now. So for us to help researchers understand and give them an idea or give them guidance on engagement based on the government submissions, for example, is very difficult because the engagement indicators are very few. There are very few indicators that you can apply to all disciplines and that are robust and transparent and can repeatedly be used. And that's why you end up saying, best thing to do is document and then create your own narratives. Evidence of impact, we all know it's probably the most challenging, even though when we know that there's very strong research behind, and especially when there's very mature research programs going for some time, going back and trying to collect that evidence or documenting what happened in the years before can be quite challenging, and in a lot of times is we just find there's been missed opportunities. Another challenge, I guess, is more in terms of understanding, and I probably relate to what we were hearing before, understanding the difference between academic impact and societal impact or end user impact. Here at Griffith, we've been working with our research impact coordinator in trying to get people not to focus too much on definitions, but trying to help them understand the differences between what they can achieve with their publications, with their funding, with their books, or with their conferences, what they can do in terms of dissemination and engagement, as Wei-Fu was showing us earlier today. And something very different but related, that is, what are the best ways, or what could be the mechanisms for them to engage with research end users, get them involved in their research questions, co-designing projects with them, and making sure that they understand what the potential impacts of their research could be on different users, or, you know, in some cases communities, or different government departments, or different groups of or agencies. And it is always not very clear to individual researchers, and we are putting a lot of effort into that guidance, and offering them resources and workshops and some individual training and other things. With the engagement impact submission, we found it was much harder to show the benefits to individual researchers or academic groups in general, because unlike ERA, everyone was involved, everyone could contribute, everyone would have highly cited papers, or you know, could potentially have high impact research to contribute to the submission. But with engagement and impact, the way it was done here was very selective. So basically just one impact study for one big field of research. So the buy-in from the academic community was quite low, and it is still quite low, simply because people feel that only very few selected researchers can contribute. And that's something that we need to work on from the point of view of incentives, and trying to make sure that everyone feels they can contribute, if not now, then in the future, and that there's different ways of different ways for research impact to be demonstrated and be promoted, not just through the government submission. And we also have another challenge, which is, and I think it is fair to say that asking sometimes, and we would probably know, we're asking too much from researchers, and this is where the question that we hear very frequently is, so do you want me to keep publishing papers, or do you want me to start engaging and spending more time talking to the communities? And there's this, it has to be one or the other, because people just won't have time to both, or they don't feel they have the skills, or they don't feel they have the support they need. And that's potentially the wrong signaling. And if we are not careful how we are taking that message, and how we make sure we support the researchers in different academic levels or different disciplines, and especially those in research that is not very familiar, that is not very connected to societal impact. There could be that feeling of what I'm doing, even if I'm trying to write really good papers, and I'm trying to get my funding for my next discovery, or this particular work that is more fundamental research, I should probably just give it up. It is not relevant anymore. Everyone is talking about societal impact. And we know that obviously for a university, and again, a university as comprehensive and as ambitious as Griffith, we need to make sure that we sustain both. We cannot do one or the other. That's probably one of our biggest challenges. As I said before, with the government submission in 2018, we realized that there's a few opportunities for us and in general for universities, I guess, to understand how important it is to promote and make research visible. And having these very strong impact case studies made us realize that that there's a method, there's a way, there's a structure that we could use and start explaining to researchers how in a very systematic way you could end up with a very strong, good case study that could be repurposed. So and at the same time we were saying, and this is not just because we have a government submission now, but because when we start showcasing these impact case studies or writing short impact stories about your work, we are helping to define institutional reputation. We're also promoting individual research and individual researchers that didn't have that opportunity before. And other offices within the university started getting interested as well. So it was not just about that compliance exercise that the research office is in charge of, but marketing and communications are very interested now and working much closer with us now around impact. It's not just news, it's not just what happened yesterday and that goes into the news and that's impact. We are working with marketing and comms to help them understand the context of research impact. And we with our research impact coordinator, Louise, she's been fantastic. She's been training the different offices and also our philanthropy unit here at Griffith, explaining how research impact works, and very similar to what Mary was saying during her talk, talking about logic models, talking about how the cycle, and I think that's all quite beneficial for the university, bringing that same level of understanding, and trying to get everyone to speak the same language. We know impact is a very broad term and it can be used in many different ways. So that's one thing that we're trying to do with the work that we're doing here in the research office, trying to unify and trying to bring all those ideas and all those concepts into one, to reduce confusion and to reduce sometimes people, academic staff, our researchers, they say, look, we feel overwhelmed because everyone's talking about impact in different ways. In the end, we just don't know which one is the right one, which one is the one that we need to be doing. So one of the things we're trying to do is unifying all those ideas into one. So in general, I think that the main positive aspect of that submission and this change that we've seen in the last few years in terms of research culture is for universities to be able to recognize the importance of evidencing impact outside academia, that there's a method, that there's a way you can do that properly, and that once you do that, you can potentially grow your partnerships. You can potentially attract new collaborations and different groups of people, different end users to the ones that you are more familiar with. And that's what we are doing at the moment. And we're still going back to the 2018 submission and trying to continue documenting and looking at how how this work has matured over the years, and hopefully we can continue doing that with more recent research. This is probably again talking about lessons and what we've learned from that submission. Probably just move to the Pathways to Impact program, just getting conscious of the time. We started the Pathways to Impact program around just in the middle of COVID, so probably late 2020. It's been a little bit slow, and given all the different things happening in the last few years, the feedback and the comment that we get from different groups is don't put too much pressure on researchers. There's already a lot happening. But we start with very simple conversations, talking to everyone about when we start talking about impact, we just go to the simple question: why is it important? Why does impact matter? And we all know, and this is something that some people are more aware of this than others. There's been a shift in the research culture in pretty much all countries globally. There's a much bigger role for research and researchers in providing benefit and solving the world's problems. So we know we're needed, and we know that we are relevant. Everything that happens within universities is usually related to looking for a solution, and it is good to remind researchers that that's probably the reason why they got into science or into the work that they're doing. Because they also wanted to find a solution to a problem. What we need to do is develop help researchers to better plan and try to incorporate impact from the very early stages of the research proposals and research ideas. We need to understand or develop better ways to measure that contribution over time. And as Mary was saying before, not just something that you measure at the end. You leave it to the end of the project to say, all right, let's see what the outcome of and what the impact of my research was. These would have to be incorporated from the very start of the program of the project, but also it has to continue, and you have to find ways of tracking where your research is going. We need to improve our ability to collaborate successfully, to advance the uptake of knowledge. So again, just following it up, seeing how far it can go and how much it can grow. And it is really important to develop those strong narratives about our research. As we said before, it is not just about a H index or a citation count or some sort of metric. It is about telling stories. And these are all the very good reasons. And we've seen here in Australia already some changes, funding agencies asking for impact statements or different variations of impact statements. We know that in some institutions, it is part of appraisal and promotion evaluation. Research reputation, it is really important now to have some sort of window, and we know with the United Nations SDGs, for example, that it can be quite influential when you can demonstrate that you are contributing to those goals. And the usual elevator pitch, we need to get our researchers ready to give their pitch to whoever is interested in their research, because you just never know where the next opportunity is going to be. So part of our Pathways to Impact program is, or the main focus, I guess, is supporting and guiding researchers on how to plan and how to recognize impact in its many forms. Again, being such a diverse university, we need to focus on different types of impact and different types of engagement and different levels of activity, I guess, depending on who you're talking to. So there's the two really key aims here: the supporting and guiding researchers, but also increasing and helping to improve institutional reputation using impact stories. Those are the main two things that we're trying to cover, and we work with marketing and communications, as I said before, and with individual researchers and the support that they have within faculties to put impact stories together and to develop workshops and training material. This is one of the diagrams we developed, trying to explain what it is, how it works, knowing that it's not always linear, or it's not always all in the same order. So we get into a little bit more detail in a research impact hub that we've been developing over the last year or so. This we want this to be the main tool for our researchers to understand what they can do and where to find help or support, or also external resources and any guidance that and we keep saying we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We know that there's already a lot of expertise and a lot of really good material outside. So we just try to put the more relevant ones depending on the discipline or depending on the academic level. So that's it is work in progress what we're doing with the Impact Hub, and part of next to the Impact Hub is the external web page, which is public facing, and this is the one we're using to promote and publish impact stories. So we are trying to update this page regularly. I invite anyone to visit our research impact page, which is called Research for a Better World. And there's very strong research behind some of the stories, or all of these stories that we've published. And the aim is to continue adding impact stories to that page. As I said before, we've been launching this program using a relatively soft approach, giving everything that is happening and has been happening in the last couple of years. But we're using impact champions. We are using regular communication, and we're trying to engage people at different levels. So we are trying the top-down, bottom-up approach, going from DVC research and Dean's research, and just contacting researchers directly as soon as we see something interesting or some potential for an impact story. We just try to talk to everyone at different levels. We think leadership play a key role, and one of the challenges, or one of the key things that we want to see happening here at Griffith is impact becoming part of those evaluation processes or appraisal or performance reviews. Obviously, from the point of view of recognition and rewarding, because we know there's a lot of people already with quite a substantial work towards research impact, and they feel that there hasn't been, it is just not recognized. We need to move from the more traditional way of evaluating research to give opportunity to these people, and then having to deal with the other side of the population, which would be people who are not really ready, or they are just starting the journey. They would say, I don't want to be punished. How are we gonna make sure that it is a consistent understanding, and that is more from the rewarding and from recognizing the effort, and not from this is what you're missing, this is what you haven't done. So that's where we are at the moment. That's part of the conversations we're having with leadership, and using also the impact stories and the impact narratives to promote researchers and give them a bit more visibility within their own groups. Now, in terms of the preparation for engagement and impact submission in 2024, we don't have guidelines from the government. As I said before, we don't know how much this would change compared to 2018. So we've been slowly trying to identify those potential case studies based on previous guidelines. We're using Impact Tracker as our strategic tool to build those case studies. We are, as I said before, working on that, how our research is going to be recognized for the effort that they're putting into this exercise. We know it is demanding. We know it needs additional support and additional resources. And once we have those guidelines, we know that it's going to get very intense. But one thing that we keep reminding ourselves and also the academic community is we don't need to focus only on the submission. It's not only for the government that we're doing this. This is also about reputation and opportunities to grow. I'm probably going to leave it there, and I'm not sure, Mary and Alex, if we have time for questions or leave it with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Claudia, for the sharing, especially, of course, in terms of Griffith University's Pathway to Impact program. And so once again, we open the floor for any questions. So you're free to type your questions in the Q&A box or even in the chat box as well. So we'll probably allow just a few minutes for people to actually type in any questions they may have. But I actually have questions, and I think this is probably, this is something that I've come across in the last, I think, in the last day. So we've been reading news about the ERA that's going to be delayed, and also, of course, ARC is will be reviewed it as well. So, what does this? What do you think this actually means for the next EI, which was, of course, previously scheduled it for 2023 or 2024? Yeah.
24. Thank you, very. I'm happy to answer that, and thank you for the question. We're still digesting the news. We only received that information from the ARC yesterday. The decision was to stop preparations for ERA 2023. The ARC, due to a minister letter, the ARC will need to form a panel and design a new format for the next ERA submission, which could potentially be in 2024, 2025. So we know ERA 2023 is not happening. That came in the middle of the peak of activity for most Australian universities, where we were in full speed getting ready for the submission. What we know, engagement and impact is mentioned in that letter, and that could be potentially impacted, but we don't have any information. I don't think any of the Australian universities have any details of what that impact is going to be. So far, what we know is that the ARC, they've been planning for that submission to happen in 2024, and we had some indications of potential changes and things that could look a little bit differently compared to the 2018, based on consultation and feedback that was submitted to the ARC last year. So we've been preparing for the submission based on those on what we did in 2018, and also that feedback that went to the government. But right now it is completely uncertain. We really don't know how much things could change, and if there's even the option that they completely change in the engagement and impact format, and it becomes something very different. We really don't know at the moment.
Okay, I see. Thank you. I do actually have another question. As you mentioned, with of course Griffith Universities, there has been lots of really positive buy-ins from the senior management, and you also mentioned there has also been some bottom-up approach as well. Can you probably also share the bottom-up approach, like in terms of academics or researchers, what they've been doing, how they actually also push for in terms of impact, building an impact culture at your university?
Sure, Mary. Look, there's different examples. It varies depending on the discipline and the type of research. For some of our researchers, it was it was really exciting. It was great news when we first approached them, and we said, we know the reach of your research. Would you be interested in writing an impact story with us, or would you be interested in working with us on an impact case study? And for some of these people, it's just like, wow, finally someone is going to look at all the work and all the effort that I've put into taking my research to this one in particular. It is a really beautiful, strong case study of real change in health systems in Indigenous communities, particularly a very remote community where, some of the numbers are like for children to be diagnosed with a particular condition, it could be up to 3 years just to be diagnosed, and then there's no chance of a treatment just because they are so remote and there's no way of getting really good health services. They've implemented their own model, healthcare model, and it is working really well. So there's depending on the story or depending on the research and the maturity, I guess, of the impact, it can be very easy, and it can be very easy to use, or to, I don't want to use the word use, but to invite these researchers to be impact champions and help us take the message and say, look, there's this really nice initiative in a research office. They are helping researchers to plan their impact or think about their impact statements for the next grant proposal. So impact champions, for example, has been a really good initiative for us. And there's other ways I think the incentive of having an impact story, having something in the Griffith Public webpage can be, again, a sign of recognition for them, and that is working relatively well for those who are already ready to tell their story. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your sharing, and I think that's actually also comes to the end of our webinar. So we'd like to actually thank you all our speakers for today's sharing. We hope that all participants have actually enjoyed this webinar, especially in terms of our sharings and sharing of our insights and experience from different countries and territories as well. I think that is important for all participants to trying to understand what actually worked, what didn't work in different areas, and also, of course, in different disciplines as well. So thank you very much for everyone attending this webinar. Especially thanks, of course, Claudia and Wei Fu for the sharing. So with that said, would like to actually once again conclude this webinar. And Iris, do you have anything to add before we end the webinar?
Not really, but actually, I do have a question for Claudia, if that is,
okay.
if we still have some time, because I think today our audience, some of them are coming from countries like Malaysia and Philippines, where an official assessment from the government or the policymakers may not be in place yet, but something that might relate to them regarding research impact might be the impact ranking, for example. I don't know if you involve in impact rankings, but do you think that your experiences in helping the researchers might help these universities to prepare in those impact rankings?
Thank you, Iris. Yeah, look, I am involved in the Times Higher Education Impact Rankings. I think that those are the impact rankings you are referring to. Is that right? The Times Higher Education Rankings. So I'm part of a working group, and so I'm not heavily involved, but I'm part of some decisions and some discussions that we have around the impact rankings. Yes and no. I guess that's probably my answer to the question. There's all the educational part that goes with what we're currently doing around research impact, I guess, is involves both impact from the point of view of individual research and how to promote your own work, how to promote your institution based on the impact that you achieve outside academia. And then with the impact rankings, because the focus is more on institutional policy and how universities are, what are universities changing? What are they doing to contribute to those global challenges that are defined under each of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? It's all connected, but they have to be, in my view, and the way we're doing it here at Griffith, we treat them separately because the impact of the research is already evaluated by Times Higher Ed. We don't have much input into that evaluation of the research because they do it based on publications. So they can access publication data and they evaluate the body of research related to a particular SDG. So there's nothing much we can do in terms of the research component of the impact rankings. What we do and what other people here at Griffith, what their job is to look at those at the indicators for the impact rankings and say, all right, these are the things that the university should be doing. If we want to do really well in this particular ranking, these are the things that the university should be doing. And some of the things are more related to institutional policies, to opportunities to engage with communities, to that contribution that the university as an institution is having as part of their local community or a particular challenge or a particular issue. So there's probably two different ways of approaching the impact rankings. One is doing the educational bit, explaining to researchers what's all about, but explaining them that there's different components to it. And what you can do with your research program, you can be contributing to the SDGs, but that not necessarily means that the impact rankings are just about your research project. It's about institutional contribution. Right. I'm hoping that's helpful, Iris. I'm not sure. Happy to have a separate chat if you like, or if you think that it could be more helpful.
Sure. I think that gives a good insight for our attendees on the difference between such impact ranking and also the impact assessments, because the body of the assessment is basically different, but one covers another.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And also for the closing remark, I think we have a very wonderful sharings today. Thank you, Claudia, again, for your questions and also the presentations. I think it is very helpful for us to understand the situations in Australia and also the experiences that you shared in the Griffith University. And I think we cover well from the upstream of preparing the impact and also to the downstream of how to present and also organize those impact in different ways. I think this is a very good webinar, and I hope everyone do find it informative. Thank you.
Okay. So once again, thank you, everyone. So I think that comes to the end of our webinar. So have a nice day and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.